The galaxy was in turmoil. A coalition of peaceful alien species known as the Avenari had thrived for centuries. Their alliance stretched across the stars, a beacon of diplomacy and shared knowledge. They had helped countless civilizations, brought prosperity to many worlds, and built a legacy of cooperation. But now, that legacy was under threat. The Kraith Dominion, a terrifying and ruthless empire, had appeared out of nowhere. With their monstrous, organic warships that devoured planets, they left nothing but destruction in their wake. No one knew where they came from or why they attacked. But one thing was certain: the Kraith were unstoppable. For the past few months, the Avenari had watched helplessly as the Kraith wiped out neighboring systems. Their most advanced fleets had tried to defend the outer colonies, but the Kraith simply absorbed their forces, adapting to each new defense tactic. What made them so terrifying wasn't just their weapons, but their ability to quickly learn and evolve. The Kraith weren't just a threat. They were a nightmare made real. The Avenari Council was in panic. Desperation filled the Grand Hall, where leaders from across the stars met to discuss their dwindling options. General Tovak, a war-hardened veteran from the Drawn species, stood at the head of the table, his voice shaking as he addressed the room. "We have lost contact with 5 colonies," he said. "The Kraith have taken them, and they are moving closer to the core worlds. If we don't act now, we risk everything." The room fell silent. The Avenari were not a warlike people. Their strength lay in their wisdom and peacekeeping, not in battle. But the Kraith were not interested in peace. They did not negotiate. They destroyed. Sereth, the young delegate from the Avenari homeworld, stood up and spoke, his voice filled with uncertainty. "We have to ask for help. If we can't fight them on our own, we need allies." The council turned their gaze toward him. Allies. The word echoed in the room, but the question was, who would come to their aid? For years, the Avenari had kept their distance from other species, believing that their diplomatic approach was the best way to ensure peace. They had maintained a neutral stance in most galactic conflicts, and as a result, they had few true allies. But now, faced with the annihilation of their people, they needed someone, anyone, to step forward. Sereth hesitated, then made a suggestion that sent a ripple of shock through the council. "There is one race that has proven themselves in battle," he said. "Humans." The room erupted in murmurs. The Avenari had always viewed humans with a mixture of fear and contempt. They were a species that thrived on chaos, a young race with a violent history, and a fondness for war. Most of the galaxy considered them uncivilized, unpredictable, and too dangerous to engage with. The Avenari, in particular, had always dismissed them as too brutal to be trusted. "Humans," General Tovak scoffed. "You want us to ask for their help? They're barbarians. They've only ever known war. They don't have the discipline to fight the Kraith." Sereth stood his ground. "I know it's not ideal, but they have experience fighting wars like this. We need their firepower, their unpredictability. The Kraith are unlike anything we've ever faced. If we want a chance, we need to consider all our options." Another council member, Dira from the Pond species, spoke up. "He's right. We've tried everything else. Our fleets are useless against the Kraith. What's the worst that could happen if we reach out to them? They may surprise us." After a long silence, the council reluctantly agreed. They had no other choice. Sereth was given the task of sending a signal to Earth, a desperate request for help. The message would be brief, straightforward. "The Avenari are under attack. Please, we need your help." It was sent, and then they waited. Days passed with no response. Sereth began to lose hope. Maybe the humans would ignore them, as the rest of the galaxy had. Maybe they would turn their back on the Avenari, just as everyone else had. But then, at long last, a reply came. It was short, to the point. "We're coming." Nothing more. But that was all the Avenari needed to hear. Sereth felt a chill run through him. It wasn't a promise of help. It wasn't a negotiation. It was a simple statement, one that held a promise of something far more terrifying than anyone in the room had expected. The humans were coming, and with them came the unknown. The days that followed the humans' cryptic response felt like an eternity. The Avenary Council members gathered every few hours to discuss what they knew, but there was little to go on. A single message was all they had received, and it left them with more questions than answers. "We're coming." What did that mean? Were the humans truly coming to help? Or was this just a dangerous gamble? Seraph spent those days in restless silence. He had always been cautious, following the diplomatic path, but now the stakes were higher than ever. The Kraith were closing in. The threat of their massive warships, biologically grown monstrosities capable of annihilating entire planets, loomed ever closer. The idea that humans could somehow help was both a blessing and a curse. The Avenary had always viewed humans with suspicion, their history marked by violent wars, unstable alliances, and unpredictable decisions. And yet they were the only species willing to respond to the Avenary's plea. Finally, the day arrived. The humans were here. The vast sky over the Avenary capital was filled with strange, enormous shapes. At first, it was hard to tell what they were. Some kind of ship, but nothing like the sleek, elegant vessels the Avenary were used to. These ships were rough, angular, and looked as if they had been patched together from the scraps of countless other ships. They weren't beautiful or graceful like the Avenary's, but there was something unmistakably powerful about them. As the human fleet descended toward the planet, a sense of awe mixed with fear spread through the Avenary. They could see the sheer size of the ships, each one larger than most Avenary warships, but they had a rugged utilitarian look, as if built not for beauty, but for survival. Seraph stood in the council chamber, staring out at the approaching fleet. The atmosphere was tense. There was no music, no formal ceremony, just silence. The Avenary had never seen anything like this before. Their ships were designed for peace, for exploration. But these human ships, they were built for war. And yet it was this war they hoped would save them. The first of the human ships landed in the capital's central square with a deafening roar, the shockwave from its landing sending a ripple through the ground. The Avenary leaders were immediately shaken by the force and noise. It was unlike anything they had ever encountered, intimidating, but not surprising. The humans were not known for subtlety. Out of the ship came the humans, wearing dark uniforms and carrying an air of confidence that sent an uncomfortable shiver through Seraph. These weren't the peaceful ambassadors the Avenary had hoped for. These were soldiers. The leader of the human fleet, a tall, stern woman, stepped forward, flanked by a team of soldiers. She was Commander Lin Q, a name that Seraph had heard of in passing, though he knew little about her. The humans weren't exactly open with their history or their leaders. "Delegate Seraph," Commander Lin Q said, her voice calm but firm. "We've received your message. We're here to help. But make no mistake, we're not here to make friends. We're here to win." Seraph wasn't sure how to respond. The words felt cold, unsettling. Was this what the Avenary had hoped for? Their saviors, so different from everything they had known. The humans quickly set to work. Their ships were unloaded with precision, their equipment a strange blend of high-tech weaponry and tools that looked like they had been pulled from a different era. Heavy-duty exoskeletons, reinforced armor, massive cannons. This was not the kind of technology the Avenary were used to. It was raw, practical, and built for one purpose: combat. Commander Lin Q gathered the Avenary leaders in a small war room. The room was filled with maps of the galaxy, holograms projecting the locations of Kraith forces. But the humans weren't here to talk strategy. They were here to act. "We've been tracking the Kraith for weeks," Lin Q said, her eyes scanning the holographic display. "And we know exactly where they are. But we need to hit them hard, fast, and with everything we've got. We won't win by playing by their rules. We'll win by breaking them." Seraph exchanged looks with the other council members. The humans were nothing like what they had imagined. They were direct, cold, and incredibly focused. There was no talk of peace or diplomacy, no grand speeches about cooperation. It was all about the fight, about surviving and winning. It was unsettling, but it was also the only option they had left. "How do you propose we fight them?" Seraph asked, his voice unsure. Lin Q looked him in the eyes. "By using their weaknesses against them. We've studied the Kraith. Their ships are vulnerable to concentrated fire, but they adapt quickly. We need to keep them off balance, make them fear us. If they fear us, they'll make mistakes, and that's when we strike." Seraph didn't know if he could trust her, or the humans, but he didn't have any other choice. The Kraith were coming, and they were closing in fast. The Avenari had no fleet left, no real strength, but the humans, they were different. They might just be the key to their survival. As Lin Q walked out of the room to prepare her forces, Seraph felt a deep sense of unease. The humans were coming, yes, but they were not the allies the Avenari had hoped for. They were something far more terrifying. The atmosphere was tense as the Avenari and humans prepared for battle. For the Avenari, the concept of war had always been distant, something spoken of in history books, not lived through. But now, with the Kraith advancing relentlessly, they had no choice but to fight. And it wasn't just any battle. It was their home at stake. Their world, their people, their way of life. Seraph stood on the command deck of one of the few remaining Avenari warships. It wasn't much, not compared to the fleet the Kraith were bringing, but it was all they had left. The humans, on the other hand, were ready. Their ships were massive and bristling with weaponry, and their soldiers were preparing for the ground assault with unshakable confidence. The sky above the Avenari planet darkened as the Kraith warships entered the atmosphere. Massive, organic ships shaped like monstrous sea creatures hovered ominously, their surfaces pulsating with energy. The Avenari fleet was no match for them. Everyone knew that. They would need the humans to stand a chance. Commander Lin Q appeared on the deck, her presence commanding instant attention. She was calm, unbothered by the looming threat. She turned to Seraph, her expression unreadable. "Ready?" she asked, her voice steady. Seraph nodded, trying to mask his anxiety. "As ready as we'll ever be." "Good. Stay in the back and let us do the fighting. Your people don't need to get their hands dirty." The way she said it left no room for argument. The humans had their own methods, and they weren't interested in doing things by the book. The Avenari weren't sure they liked that, but right now, they didn't have the luxury of questioning their allies. The battle began with the roar of weapon fire. The Kraith unleashed their first wave, dark energy blasts raking across the sky, tearing through the Avenari defenses. Their warships were like living creatures, and each blast felt like a strike from a massive beast. The humans didn't hesitate. They fired back, their ships' weapons lighting up the dark sky. But instead of the sleek, precise shots the Avenari expected, the humans' weapons were raw, chaotic. The blasts were heavy, powerful, and they hit hard, shaking the Kraith ships with the kind of force that made Seraph's heart race. "What are they doing?" Seraph asked, his voice filled with disbelief. Lin Q turned her gaze to him, a hint of amusement in her eyes. "We're making them pay for every inch they take." The human ships weren't afraid to take damage in exchange for dealing damage. They traded blows with the Kraith without hesitation, launching aggressive strikes and using their smaller ships to swarm the Kraith's larger vessels. The Kraith ships, though massive, were not prepared for such tactics. They were built to destroy, not to react to such chaos. Seraph watched as one of the human ships took a direct hit, exploding in a brilliant flash of light. The Avenari winced, but the humans didn't flinch. They just pressed on, throwing everything they had at the Kraith. The humans fought with a tenacity that was both terrifying and inspiring. "They don't care about their own casualties," Seraph said, almost in awe. "They're just throwing themselves at the enemy." "That's how we fight," Lin Q replied. Survival is everything. No one survives without sacrifice. As the battle raged on, the Avenari saw the effectiveness of the humans' unconventional tactics. The Kraith, although powerful, were thrown into disarray by the unpredictable nature of the human assault. The humans didn't fight like the Avenari or any other species Sereth had encountered. They didn't rely on precision or strategy. They fought with brute force, aggression, and a willingness to sacrifice everything. It was a method that seemed almost reckless, but it was working. Then, the ground assault began. The Avenari had prepared defensive positions on the planet's surface, but they knew it wouldn't be enough. The Kraith were too strong. That's when the human soldiers dropped from the sky in their heavy-duty exoskeletons, armed with high-tech weapons that could tear through the Kraith's organic defenses. The ground shook as human forces clashed with the Kraith troops, each side locked in brutal hand-to-hand combat. Sereth had never seen anything like it. The human soldiers were everywhere, moving with terrifying speed and strength, cutting through Kraith soldiers like they were nothing. It was as if the humans thrived in chaos, feeding off the violence. They moved like predators, relentless and unstoppable. Commander Lin Q led the charge herself, her face set in a mask of determination. She was at the heart of the battle, directing her troops and coordinating the assault. Her actions were calculated, but her demeanor was anything but calm. The humans weren't just fighting for victory. They were fighting for survival, for a future. Sereth couldn't help but feel a deep sense of admiration mixed with fear. The humans didn't just fight. They reveled in it. They were everything the Avenari had feared. And yet, they were the only thing standing between the Kraith and total destruction. The tide of the battle was turning. The Kraith, who had seemed unbeatable, were starting to falter. The humans' relentless assault was beginning to break their lines. But even as victory seemed possible, Sereth knew this was just the beginning. The Kraith would not go down without a fight. And the humans, they weren't here to play fair. The battle raged on for hours, the sky filled with the roar of weapons and the distant explosions of ships colliding in space. The humans' brutal tactics had already taken a toll on the Kraith, but Sereth knew this was only the beginning. The Kraith weren't a species to surrender easily. If anything, their retaliation would be far fiercer. On the surface of the Avenari planet, the human soldiers continued their ground assault. The Kraith were relentless, pushing forward with terrifying force. Their soldiers, terrifying and massive, fought with an animal-like ferocity, their weapons sharp and lethal. But the humans didn't back down. They fought with equal intensity, using their heavy exoskeletons and advanced weaponry to cut through the Kraith like a hot knife through butter. Sereth stood on the command deck, watching the chaos unfold. He had never seen such a brutal war. The humans were relentless, charging forward, their movements calculated and precise despite the chaos around them. It was unlike anything the Avenari had ever known. But it was working. Slowly, but surely, the tide was turning in their favor. "We can't hold them off forever," Sereth said, his voice tight with fear. "The Kraith are pushing back. We need more reinforcements." Commander Lin Q turned to him, her face unreadable. "We've given everything we've got. Reinforcements won't change the outcome. What we need is to break their will to fight." Sereth felt a chill run through him. What did she mean by that? The Kraith were not known for their mercy. They would fight to the death, and if they were pushed into a corner, they would fight even harder. On the battlefield, the humans were everywhere. They moved with deadly efficiency, their weapons flashing in the dim light as they cut down Kraith soldiers. The Avenari had never seen anything like it. The human soldiers weren't just soldiers. They were warriors in the truest sense of the word. They didn't just fight for survival. They fought because they wanted to win. But despite the humans' best efforts, the Kraith weren't going down easily. They adapted quickly, their warships shifting tactics, and their soldiers growing more ruthless. Soon, it became clear that the human strategy, while effective, wasn't enough to guarantee a win. The Kraith were stronger, faster, and more dangerous than the humans had anticipated. "We need a new plan," Sereth said urgently. "We can't keep fighting them head-on. They're too powerful." Lin Q glanced at him. "We have one chance. We strike at their heart." "Where?" Sereth asked. "Their fleet is too strong. Their forces are everywhere. We can't break through." Lin Q's eyes hardened. "The Kraith are strong, but they have a weakness. They rely on their warships to lead their forces. Without their ships, they'll lose their coordination. We take down their flagship, and we break them." Sereth stared at her, not sure if he was hearing her correctly. "You want to target their flagship? How do we even get close to it? It's surrounded by their entire fleet." "We don't need to get close," Lin Q replied. "We just need to get their attention." She turned and walked to the communication console, relaying orders to her fleet. Sereth didn't have time to argue. If they were going to win, they had to take risks. And the humans were experts at taking risks. The human ships moved into position. They weren't retreating. They were regrouping, preparing for one last push. The Avenary watched, amazed, as the humans deployed their heavy artillery, focusing all their firepower on a single target, the Kraith flagship. The human strategy was simple: overwhelm the enemy with force, strike fast, and keep the pressure on. As the human fleet fired, the Kraith flagship flared with energy, absorbing the blasts. But it wasn't invincible. Slowly, the flagship began to show signs of damage. The Kraith tried to retaliate, launching energy beams at the human ships, but the humans were ready. They dodged and countered with pinpoint accuracy. "We're getting through," one of the human commanders shouted over the comms. "Push harder." Sereth couldn't believe what he was seeing. The humans weren't just fighting. They were overwhelming the Kraith. With every strike, the flagship's defenses weakened, and the Kraith began to panic. They tried to regroup, to rally their forces, but it was too late. The humans had already broken their lines. The flagship's shields flickered, then collapsed. A massive explosion rocked the battlefield, sending shockwaves through the surrounding ships. The Kraith flagship was down. The heart of their fleet had been destroyed. "Victory is within our grasp," Lin Q said, her voice steady. "Now, we finish it." With the flagship gone, the Kraith forces scattered, their coordination falling apart. The humans pressed forward, their ships and soldiers cutting through the remaining Kraith defenses with ease. The Kraith, once so powerful and unyielding, were now in disarray. The human attack had shattered their resolve. Sereth watched in disbelief as the Kraith began to retreat. It was over. The humans had done the impossible. They had turned the tide of battle. And now, the Kraith were on the run. For the first time since the battle began, Sereth allowed himself to breathe. They had won. Thanks to the humans, they had won. But deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. The Kraith would return, and they would come prepared. But for now, the Avenary had survived. And the humans, they had proven themselves to be the most terrifying allies anyone could have. The victory was hard won, but it wasn't complete. The Kraith were in retreat, their flagship destroyed, their forces scattered. But everyone knew this wasn't the end of the war. The Kraith were a relentless species, and they would regroup. They would come back, stronger and more prepared. And when they did, they would remember the defeat, and it would only make them angrier. Sereth stood on the balcony of the Avenary Command Center, looking out over the battlefield. The ground was scared, the sky dark with the remnants of war. Smoke rose from the wreckage of both human and Kraith ships. The air was heavy with the scent of destruction. But amidst the chaos, there was also something else: hope. The humans had shown them what it meant to fight, to never back down, no matter the cost. The Avenary had fought hard, but the humans fought with a ferocity that left them in awe. The Kraith had underestimated the power of humanity. They had come thinking that the humans would be easy to crush, but they had been wrong. Lin Q walked up beside Sereth, her expression serious. She had seen the toll the battle had taken on both sides. The humans had lost many ships and soldiers, but their resilience had been unwavering. The Avenari, too, had paid a heavy price, but they had survived. "We won the battle," Sereth said, turning to face her. "But what comes next? The Kraith won't just forget this." Lin Q nodded, her eyes filled with a hard determination. "We can't afford to rest. We need to rebuild, fortify our defenses, and prepare. The Kraith will return, and when they do, we'll be ready. But we won't face them alone." Sereth looked at her in confusion. "What do you mean?" Lin Q's lips curled into a small smile. "We've shown the galaxy what humanity can do, and we've proven ourselves worthy allies. The Avenari aren't the only ones fighting the Kraith. There are others, out there, waiting for the right moment to strike. We'll have reinforcements." Sereth's eyes widened as he realized the significance of her words. The humans weren't just here to fight for the Avenari. They were here to rally others, to unite the galaxy against the Kraith. And with their terrifying reputation, humanity had the power to do just that. As if on cue, a transmission came through from one of the human fleet's commanders. "Commander Lin Q, we've received communications from multiple systems. They're ready to join the fight. The Avenari aren't alone anymore. We're forming an alliance." The room went silent for a moment, and then a cheer erupted from the human officers in the command center. The news was a turning point. The Kraith would no longer be able to threaten the galaxy with impunity. The Avenari, now bolstered by human strength, were ready to stand tall with the rest of the universe's fighters. Sereth looked at Lin Q with a new respect. He had seen humanity's terrifying ability to fight and win against impossible odds. But now he understood something deeper. The humans didn't just fight for themselves. They fought for everyone. And their commitment to victory wasn't just a matter of survival. It was a matter of justice. "We have a chance," Sereth said softly. "A real chance." Lin Q's smile widened. "We always had a chance. Now we've got the whole galaxy backing us." The human strategy had always been simple, but it was effective. They didn't wait for the enemy to strike first. They didn't hesitate. When the Kraith came, they hit back hard. And now, the galaxy had learned a lesson. Humanity was a force to be reckoned with. But even with the alliance forming and the Kraith retreating, Lin Q knew the fight was far from over. The Kraith would regroup. They would come back. And when they did, humanity would be there, ready for another fight. Because for humans, war was never just about survival. It was about victory, no matter the cost. Sereth felt a chill at the thought. He had witnessed the humans in action, and he knew that they would stop at nothing to win. But he also understood something else. The humans weren't fighting for glory. They weren't fighting for fame or riches. They were fighting to protect others. They were fighting to save lives, to preserve peace, and to ensure the future of the galaxy. As the sun set over the battlefield, Sereth stood tall beside Lin Q. The victory had been theirs, but the war was far from over. Yet, with humanity by their side, Sereth knew that they had a fighting chance. The Kraith had been terrifying, but they were not invincible. And humanity. Humanity was something far more terrifying. The humans were coming, and they would bring the fight to the Kraith, and to anyone who threatened the peace of the galaxy.